Yeah. So today we are going to, you know, talk about the create table uh, in Snowflake. So what's new in Snowflake create table structure, right? It is pretty much like a traditional warehouse database, a traditional database syntax like create table, table name, and the the data type and column. Uh, but apart from the regular structural syntax, uh, I noticed few variants available in Snowflake database where you can leverage those feature uh, for your various projects. So what's special in on those feature? That is something we are going to see in this video. So basically, in Snowflake, it's if we all know it's a data warehouse platform. You can create the tables, views, pretty much like the traditional database. Uh, so, but it has quite extra additional attributes when you create a table. That is something we are going to explore. I would say deep dive on particular topic. I mean, on those attribute itself. Create table, if you see here, it has a lot of components, attributes or functions, whatever it is. Um, but today we are going to see this portion, right? What is local, global, temporary, volatile, and transient, and we'll take a look on execute these things in um, real-time environment or cloud mines, particularly Snowflake environment, and see and what is the use cases for these um, optional tag and how we can leverage when we work with the client or for your projects. What is the use case? That is something we're going to see in this video. So let me log in into my account. Um, and this is how typically we create a table, right? So create or replace. It is forcefully, recreate the same table name. That's why the replace is a keyword. And local or the temporary volatile is a transient. These are the keywords we can use when we create a table in Snowflake. So if I scroll down a little bit this on this documentation, this optional parameter, right? So let me walk through this first. Uh, so specify the table persists only on the session creator, and that's key. That's the primary component of this, I would say, only two, you know, functionality. Either you can create a table temporarily, or you can create a table in permanently. So in in temporarily, you have two flavor or two other inner functionality. Uh, let me let me draw uh, here. If I get it. Let me take my notepad. So one is temporary and permanent. So another temporary, we can create a temporary table or volatile or transient table. If we don't specify these keywords like temporary, volatile, or persistent, by default, it will create a table with a permanent feature. So from the documentation, what I understand is temporary table is something like which is available until that session has been, you know, disconnected. So for example, if I create a table like A on session 123, this is session 123. If I create a table A, as soon as I close my session or close my browser or close your CL, disconnect your SNOSQL interface, what will happen is this for this whatever the temporary table we are creating in this session, everything will be dropped. So that is called the temporary table in Snowflake. Uh, the other term, volatile and transient table, that which means that table will stay beyond the session, which means even if you close the session or disconnect the session, the transient table will stay until we manually drop the table. But what is the difference between this permanent and transient table, right? So, as per the documentation, the transient table doesn't have a, um, you know, the backend time travel. I would say not time travel, fail safe. For example, if you create a permanent table, Snowflake provides the other features like time travel, and even though if you drop the data, you can retrieve from file safe uh, retention period mechanism. We can get it back. Uh, if you create the tables with a transient, which means those are less important data, so so we don't, I mean, it doesn't support with a failsafe. So that is something we just need to, keep in mind uh, when we create the tables in Snowflake. So that's what they give it here. If you create a temporary table, the same name, it will drop temporary. Yeah. So and this is a place that I have mentioned about the transient tables, like permanent table, transient table exist explicitly a drop and visible to any user with appropriate privileges. However, transient table has lower level of data protection than permanent tables, which means they are low uh, value. So, for example, if you create a permanent table in Snowflake, by default, Snowflake assign that table as a failsafe. So for failsafe, we are paying to Snowflake. But if you create a transient table, we don't want to pay extra storage cost for the failsafe. That is, so if you don't care about that, even if you lost the data, you don't want to care about those, means we can create the table as a transient. So that is something very um, very important difference between why we want to create a transient table or why do we want to create a permanent table or why do we want a temporary table. So let's take a look on uh, with this simple use cases and example. So I created the um, worksheet, SQL worksheet in the Snow site in the user interface. So I have set of statements, so create statement. I'm going to execute one by one, and we'll see how it is exactly is working behind the scene, whether it is working as per the documentation or not, right? So, if you want to see the current session of your um, terminal or anything, you just need to check. You can run this command or statement, select current session. If I run this, um, it it basically this tab is mapped with this current session. So right now I'm in sales database public schema. So let me expand this for a moment. Um, okay, so I have one transit table, but will create another name. So I'm going to create a temporary table. So in order to create a temporary table, this is the syntax: create temporary uh, table, my table, that the table name basically, and then column. So pretty much same. But if you notice here, they have provided this local global. So I tested with the local global, doesn't have any much difference of using local or global. But you just need to keep this keyword for sure in order to, if you decide if you want to keep this table as a temporary. We'll see what exactly the temporary means, and but theoretically, as per the documentation, temporary table means that the table will stay only until the session has been created, until we close the session or kill the session. So let me create this table, right? So my temp table. So as you noticed, I created this my temp table under sales public schema. So if I refresh it, so under my sales database public schema, now we are seeing my temp table. So this is a temporary table, right? If you see the definition, it's clearly as a temporary keyword with that. So um, we can execute this, like select start from. So as this we created, we haven't inserted any data, so it's perfectly working within my current session. So what is the current session? We saw that already. So this is my current session ID. Let me keep this for a moment here. We may need this to, evaluate the two different sessions. Now I have my SnowSQL interface. Okay, so um, let me connect to my Snowflake account. So I already made a video about how we can use NoSQL to connect your existing um, Snowflake account. So right now, let's say use, so what's the table? Okay, my temp table. This is under sales schema, right? So select start from sales and public and dot my temp table. Hmm. What happened, right? We're not able to access because if you remember, we created the session, the temporary table on the session. Let's see what the session here. It is something different, 25933, some number, but here is different number. So if you open use a new interface or new terminal, each individual terminal its own individual session. So that's why we are not able to access the temporary table. So as per the documentation in Snowflake, we can't access the temporary table outside of this particular session, has been created. So this is very important, right? So what is the use cases like this? Maybe when you run out ETL code and you may need a temporary table just for a particular session, and and after the session has been completed, you want to drop the table which no longer read like temporary table. So in those cases, we can think of like using temporary tables. But I see in many projects people go with just a permanent table. But temporary table is, I think, is we can save our storage cost, right? Because why if you don't care about the particular session data or particular table data for a long-term perspective, right? You can use temporary table for the particular session, right? So just for your data pipeline ETL daily incremental load, we can just use the temporary table and we can drop it as soon as the session has been completed. I, this is one of the use case I'm thinking, but it has a lot of use cases. But this is I can think of. So in order to make sure whether I can able to access other permanent tables, if you see, I have another table called customer, right? Let me try quickly whether I can able to access that table or not. sales database, public schema, and then customer. Execute. See, I could able to access my permanent table, right? Uh, so that is a different. I have another interface like here. I connected my Snowflake account using Visual Studio Code. I'm gonna execute here and see database, sales, public, and table. Hmm. So I don't see my temp table here, right? So what is this? If you execute the current session here, so this is a different session than the session in uh, in our SnowSQL, right? In SnowSQL, we saw that is a different table, different session ID. So basically, right now I connected three different uh, application client connection. In each three different client connection, it has been created with each unique session ID. That's why I'm not able to see that temporary table. So, so what if? So I just want to make sure um, if I close this session or kill this session, then I should not see that my temp table in my current session, whichever way I created on, especially on this session, right? So you can just take that session ID, which is where you created the temp table, and then go back on any one of the interface, and here you just copy paste that session. This will abort the session, basically terminate the session or the kill the session. If I execute, it's terminated. If I go back and see, refresh, now my temp table is gone, right? So this is how we can we can think of like using the temporary table for our projects, especially whenever we need, like just for you know just for session perspective uh, thing, right? So that is the key difference, or that is very important uh, aspects. If you if whenever you, when do we want you to use temporary table? Uh, right. So this is this is something about temporary table, and so also I just want to play around with the other the keywords or the terms they mentioned in the documentation. So I thought, okay, let's create global temp instead of temporary temp tables. But I don't see any difference here. Probably great, let me know if you see any difference over that. So if I execute, create a global temp table. Now if I refresh, this global temp table is created on my this session. What is my current session? Because we killed the existing one, this is my current session. Um, so if I come back and refresh here, I don't see global table. So if I try to execute this on my other session, it's not exist. So it is typically like, you know, uh, typical like temporary table, but they do have extra, you know, additional attributes or keywords we can use it accordingly. The another important aspects, right? Let's say, um, let's say we have a permanent table called employee. Employee. Assume this is a permanent table. For some reason, the other developer they want to they or he or she is developing their ETL code, the pipeline code. By the time she wants or something like that. Let's assume for use case perspective. She creating a temporary table on the same name, like employee. What happened? Whether Snowflake is allowing to create. What if I just put select star, right? So that is we can clear on now. So we have a select customer, right? Because this that is the customer table. This is permanent table. If I execute the let's start from customer. Oh, sorry, from have data just to make sure I have a whether I can able to execute from here the session. Yes, same data. Now assume I'm going to create the same table with the same name, the temporary. So customer. This time I'm creating the table with the customer, temporary table with the customer, but the one we have already permanent table. Now I'm creating the temporary table with the customer. If I execute, what will happen? Wow, it created, but there is no change, right? There is no change here. So what is happening? So if I execute select start from customer back, now no data. Hmm, interesting. Why? So as per the documentation, the um, they are giving high precedence for temporary table first, and then first maybe it's like a ranking one, two, and permanent table later, or transient table, permanent table or transient table, right? So that's why um, when you when you create the table temporarily, Snowflake allows us to create the same table name, uh, just like existing permanent table. But when you do this select star on the table, it goes first to the temporary table rather than go to permanent table. So until that session has been killed or terminated or aborted, your query, the select start from customer query, always will read the data from temporary table. So that is very important point uh, we have to understand that. So let's if let's kill that session. What happened? So this is a session, right? Just execute the session, grab that ID, and now if I abort the session and if I go back and will be create a new session now, and if I execute select start from customer again, this time it will read from permanent table, right? Because that session has been completed or it's killed. So this is very important and very also sometimes when we do the ETL design or ETL pipeline design, we will literally confuse what is happening, right? Um, so we have to be very careful when we choose the table name, or if you want to specifically use the same table name. Uh, this is what will happen when you have the same table name like permanent table name. So this is that is very key important difference on that. Now we talked about temporary table and we saw how what is the ranking order, which one is running first and on the particular session. And we also saw the different types of executing the temporary table, like using the global temporary word keyword. Now we're going to see create transient table. So volatile, transient, both are same. So I'm going to execute the transient table now. Let's see. Um, Before that, I have already my transient table, so I don't want to mess. I don't want to have the same name. So let's say table two. So my transient table two I'm creating now on which session on my Snowflake session. Execute that. It's created. Check the session. This is running on this session. So the my transient table underscore two has been created successfully without any problem. Now, if I go back to my terminal or the other terminal, in this case Visual Studio, if I refresh my tab, as you see, my transient table two has been created. Right? That is because this transient or volatile table will sit beyond the session, right, until we explicitly go and drop that table, that will stay forever. So that is the key important difference. And let's take a look on same on volatile. If I create my volatile table is created. Uh, Refresh. Okay, so um, okay, so this volatile, I think that's the table name. My volatile table. Um, okay, so I think volatile also is like temporary table. Let me sign out. Sign in. Sales, public, table. Right. So just to make sure this like temporary table, I can execute and see. This is right. So basically the temporary or global volatile, it's pretty much sitting within the session. So if I refresh here, so we have two uh, transient table and volatile table. Now let's execute the session and see whether the volatile table is stay after the session has been terminated or not. So it's terminated. Go back here and temp table and refresh. It's gone. So temporary table, global temp, volatile, all three are same category, which means that will stay um, um, until the session has been done, right? So that's something. I'm not sure why they have these three different tag for same functionality, but we are seeing it's the same scenario. So the transient table, right? So that something is still is there. We can execute and see from other session. It's there, right? So we can access the transient table beyond the session. So, and this is something I want to talk about the other portion, like uh, data storage portion, right? So the um, we can we can take a look how Snowflake is charging for the transient table versus the permanent table. So if you see that this differentiation, so the transient table will persistence the data until we explicitly drop, but there is no fail-safe period, which means if there is anything goes wrong in Snowflake or from our perspective, you cannot retrieve back the data for if the table is a transient table. But at the same time, if the table is permanent, you can we can retrieve the table beyond the time travel. That is different story. I believe Snowflake, you guys know about Snowflake has a time travel feature. So beyond the time travel, you still have 7 days you can, for regular account to get the things done, get the data back. So that is the key important for creating the table. So creating temporary tables and creating the uh, permanent table difference. Also, by default, it's if you don't specify any keyword. And moreover, you can also uh, create the schema as a transient schema. You can, if you click on here, create schema. So whatever by default, if you create any table under the schema, by default will be a transient table. So that is also one of the um, things we have to, consider when we design our schema for any projects. So this is the key important. So what is the use case? Permanent table. If you think you want to store the data for a long time for your data analytical or warehousing perspective, then keep the table data permanently and just make sure you are paying cost for the Snowflake for permanent data storage. But if you think you don't want to care about the data, even if you lost and it is less storage cost, then probably think of like transient table. And you pretty much don't care about data, or just you need the data only for a temporary session period, then think of using temporary session tables. So these are the three different area of when we when we create the table before we can before we create the table we can consider the situation. So I hope I made clear about these three differences. Uh, just let me know in comment section if you like this video. Probably give a thumbs up. I will try to put more video, just like with more content on it. See you in next video.